Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by just officially welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee Kap, Sawadee Kap. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Nice to see all of you guys here at the temple, and welcome to all of you guys that are joining us online as well. Today is our group learning program where we help students to develop a foundation in the path to enlightenment. It's actually a 7-month program that I teach each Sunday morning, and then I also teach Sunday night from home as well, and I live stream that. So no matter where you are in the world, you can get a live class either in the morning or in the evening, and learning gradually the foundational teachings of the Buddha, which will lead to the enlightened mental state. The enlightened mental state is where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any discontent feelings. By the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated out of the enlightened mind. There's qualities such as focus, concentration, clarity, deep memory. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships are blossoming because you're no longer being bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships. And you'll notice that you're not even in a bad mood anymore. And the mind is accomplishing this mental state through training the mind. The teachings of the Buddha aren't a bunch of beliefs that you believe a bunch of things, then you hope something good happens when you die. Instead, you're learning teachings now, you're examining them, you're investigating them, you're reflecting on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false, and then you're practicing his teachings in order to train the mind and transform the mind. The Buddha essentially discovered 10 individual pollutions in the mind. We refer to these as fetters. What a fetter is like a shackle or a chain or a ball. This is something that kept prisoners in place, and during ancient times, it would keep somebody confined to a particular space. So if you had a fetter on your leg, you had this shackle and a chain and a ball, and it would keep you trapped in this particular area. So these 10 fetters or these 10 pollutions or taints are things that the Buddha discovered about the unenlightened mind that's keeping it trapped in this cycle of experiencing anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings. And when you understand what these fetters are and you uproot them out of the mind, then the mind moves to this brightness and this radiance where the mind can be joyful and peaceful all the time. It's physically impossible for an enlightened being to ever experience sadness or anger or frustration or any of those discontent feelings ever again. And one of the important things that we do in order to train the mind to that mental state is meditation. So I'm going to guide you on the meditation session to get us started for our class today. And then after our meditation, I'm going to transition into a topic that is scheduled for today, which is chapter 24 of this book that we use for this program. The book that we use for this program is the first book of a 13-book series that's over there on the bookshelf. You can download it from our website for free. You can take it and go print it if you like. You can get printed copies here at the temple by just reimbursing us for our printing cost. Or you can get it on Amazon too if you have access to that. So this book, this first one of the series, we use it for this program. It's titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. It's part of a book series that's titled The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden. And I walk students through each Sunday, chapter by chapter by chapter, helping them understand the teachings of the Buddha. And today's topic is chapter 24, which is titled Misunderstandings of Gotama Buddhist Teachings, because we're 2,500 years after the death of the Buddha, and people have inadvertently made changes to his teachings or overtly made changes to his teachings. So all throughout this program for the last 6.5 months, I've been teaching students what the teachings of the Buddha are. And then now here at the end, I'm going to be sharing with students what the misunderstandings are. So this is one of the ways for you to be able to understand the teachings of the Buddha and the path to enlightenment is by understanding the misunderstandings. But we'll get into that after we do our meditation. I see that Joel has handed out the daily chants. This is something that we use to ease into meditation. The chanting during the lifetime of the Buddha was done in order to commit the teachings to memory, because everything he taught was oral, where he would teach orally, and then every 2 weeks his students would come together and chant, and they would recite his teachings word for word for word. So we chant in the Pali language. This is the original language of the source teachings of the Buddha. Today, we don't need to chant in order to commit the teachings to memory because we have books and videos and podcasts and things like this. But we still chant as a way to ease the mind into meditation. It kind of invigorates the mind, helps you to get awareness of the mind, awareness of the breath as you ease into meditation. If you look at these chants with the English translations, there's a lot of respect and gratitude and admiration for the Buddha. I suspect that the Buddha didn't actually create these chants himself. It was probably his students, either during his life or after his death, because a Buddha doesn't walk around and teach people to chant things to admire him, right? Because he would have eliminated his ego and his arrogance and his pride and boastfulness. So he wouldn't have created chants like this for his students to chant to him. These aren't a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. You're not honoring the Buddha and then he's going to do something for you in this life. Instead, you're learning his teachings, you're independently verifying them, and you're practicing them in order to train your own mind. And because you're learning now, reflecting now, and practicing now, you see the results now in this life with your mind becoming more peaceful and more joyful in this life. So we use these chants as a way to ease the mind into meditation. Then once we get into meditation, I'll provide you some guidance so you'll understand how to meditate. Then there'll be a period of time where we'll just be meditating together. Everybody here and those of you guys online will just be meditating together at the same time. I'm sure you'll hear an occasional dog bark or a car go past or a bird chirping or something like this, but you'll hear in the meditation how I teach you how to deal with those situations whenever your mind goes to something like that. And then we'll come out of the meditation with some chanting, and then that's where I'll transition over to our topic today and help you guys understand the misunderstandings of Gotama Buddha's teachings. So there's 4 positions to meditate in. There's seated, lying, standing, and walking. Usually when people are first learning, they're learning in the seated position, either on the floor, in a chair. If you'd like to get a chair at any point, feel free to get a chair because you'd like your body to be comfortable, not painful, but not luxurious either. So you'd like it to be comfortable in the middle. And if you're on the floor, you might just lightly cross your legs. That'll allow the circulation to flow. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets the hips up in the air and lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles and allows the circulation to flow better. The hands and the arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. But this practice isn't about everybody doing it exactly the same way, because different people are going to find different things comfortable. All of our bodies are different, and you may or may not find this to be comfortable. So there's other options here as well. You might decide to put your palms on your thighs or your knees or your palms up. You might even just rest your hands in your lap. It's really whatever's comfortable for you. And if you'd like to have a chair, some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, and then again put your hands wherever's comfortable for you. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, and with your sternum up and your shoulders back, it allows you to breathe in really nicely into the lungs. So by having your sternum up and your upper body erect, it'll keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind might be overactive or uptight. So you like the upper body to be in the middle where it's erect, so that way you can breathe and the mind is attentive and alert during the meditation. So I'm going to do some chanting to ease us into meditation. I apologize for my voice. I'm a little bit sick. I don't know if you guys can tell. Got a little bit of a sinus infection going on. So I will chant to go into meditation. You're welcome to join along in the chants. And then once we do the chanting, I'll provide you some guidance in the meditation itself. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Otang Bhagavantang Apivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho สังฆังนามามิ นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมพุทโธสกาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวาปนุสนังโอโตภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to your next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, establishing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Once the breath is well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวาพุทธังภะคะวันตังอะภิวาเทมิ สวากขาโตมหาควตาธัมโมธัมมังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาควโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมพุทโธสคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I will once again welcome all of you guys here at the temple, including those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to everyone online, including those that joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to everyone. For those of you guys that this is your first time here at the temple, I'd like to just let you know that in the back of the room, in the very last door on the right, we have a bathroom. Feel free to use the bathroom as you like. You can come and go as you please. There's even a bathroom outside the classroom. If you follow the signs to the main temple bathrooms, there's a larger bathroom over there that you might be interested to use as well. And we even have water here that is provided by our students, that if you would like to help yourself to any water, feel free to make yourself comfortable. I'm going to be sharing teachings here to help you guys understand the teachings of the Buddha. And as I do, there might be various questions that you guys have. You're welcome to ask any and all questions. Here at the temple, if you'd like to ask questions, we have microphones in the white bowl in front of the camera. And if you get a microphone and you press the gray button, there's the light that comes on. You just wait like a second or two, and then you hold it up to your chin, and then we'll be able to hear you here at the temple. And they'll even be able to hear you online as well. And then you can even keep that microphone with you and just pass it around. We have plenty of them so that they can be spread out throughout the group. And then as you guys have questions, and there's a microphone somewhere close by. For those of you guys online, if you would like to ask questions, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom, and I'll see that in the comment section. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions by just opening up your mic, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple. So this meditation that we just did, it's called breathing mindfulness meditation. This is a primary form of training that the Buddha used in order to train his mind to enlightenment. But there's other teachings you need besides just meditation. You can't meditate your way to enlightenment. It's not possible. You need meditation, but you wouldn't be able to get to meditation or get to enlightenment without meditation either. So while it's a priority in one's practice, it's not the only thing you're doing in order to train the mind to get to enlightenment. As you're meditating, and the guidance is to focus on the breath, and anytime the mind moves off the breath, you're cutting that off and letting it go and bringing the mind back to the breath. What you're doing is you're cultivating what's called mindfulness or awareness of mind, where you can be aware of what's going on in your own mind. And you're developing concentration or focus or clarity of mind. And then when the mind moves off the breath, you're training the mind to let go. To let go. We come back to the breath, because what's causing the mind to be angry and sad and frustrated and all these other discontent feelings that I mentioned at the beginning of class, like irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, the boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy, the displeasure in the mind. It's called craving, desire, attachment. This is the mental longing for something with a strong eagerness. The unenlightened mind, if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. You get happy, excited, elated, thrilled, euphoria. But if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, and others. The mind is actually causing its own anger, its own frustration. People typically believe that other people are causing you to be angry. But when you study the teachings of the Buddha, you can actually independently verify that your mind is causing its own anger, its own sadness, its own frustration. And this is the reason why you can eliminate it. You don't need to go out into the world and train other people to do things your way. This is what the unenlightened mind will typically do when it doesn't get what it wants. It experiences these painful feelings. It falsely attributes these painful feelings to something external, something outside of yourself. So what you'll tend to do is you'll tend to push people away out of your life, or you'll push a situation out of your life and think that this solves the problem. The unenlightened mind thinks that the problem is this person, maybe your friend or a family member or a coworker. So you'll tend to push them out of your life and think that that solves the problem. But that doesn't solve the problem, because you just get irritated or annoyed or frustrated about something else. If that was the true problem and you had solved the problem by pushing this person or this situation out of your life, you wouldn't get angry. You wouldn't get irritated or annoyed any longer, because you've solved your problem. Or the second thing the mind will do when it falsely understands what the problem is in the unenlightened mind is it'll become bitter and harsh and hostile towards other people with your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And an individual will try to fear somebody into doing things their way, because the mind thinks, if I can just get things my way, if I get what I want, then I get these pleasant feelings. So an unenlightened mind can be bitter and harsh and hostile towards others. Or you might put your expectations on somebody, trying to pressure them or control them to do things your way, wanting them to do things in order to get your cravings fulfilled. So as long as the mind doesn't understand what the problem is, it'll keep pushing people away. It'll be bitter and harsh and hostile, and you'll put your expectations on people. But when you study the teachings of the Buddha and you see that your mind is actually causing your own discontent feelings, this is very empowering, because now when you understand what the problem is and you start applying the solutions, you can actually fix it. You can actually eliminate your anger and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, because what you do is you remove the causes and conditions that are producing the anger to arise in the mind. And namely, this is craving, desire, attachment, this mental longing and strong eagerness. So for example, if you're in the mall and you're walking through the mall and you see a brand new pair of shoes, you might be like, yes, brand new pair of shoes. Yes, I can't wait to get those. Oh, that's going to be so great. Or maybe a new phone or a new computer or a video game or some clothing or something like this. And if you get it, you get so happy and so excited. But this is what's called a conditioned feeling, that your feeling is based on some condition, this thing, this object. And this object is impermanent. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. So your happiness is also impermanent. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. So if you wake up in the morning and you see it's sunny outside, you might get happy. but the sun is impermanent. So that means your happiness is impermanent. So when it starts raining, you might get sad or frustrated or irritated. Or if you go into that shoe store and they have your shoe size and you can buy those shoes, you'll get excited. But if they don't have your shoes in your size, you might get frustrated or annoyed by that. That's because your mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition, this craving, this desire, this longing, this yearning. So this meditation that you're doing, you're training your mind to let go so that you're not chasing after things. The unenlightened mind thinks that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So it chases after it. So with that mindfulness or awareness of mind, that concentration, you can observe when your mind's longing and yearning, when you're chasing after that boyfriend or girlfriend, or chasing after more money, or you're chasing after a bigger car or a bigger house. Some of these things, you're going to need these things in life, but it's when your mind falsely believes that this external thing is going to make you feel complete and make you feel whole. This is where the real problem comes in, is if you think this boyfriend or girlfriend is going to make you feel whole, well, then when you get with that boyfriend or girlfriend 6 months down the road, when you see that they're struggling in life just like you, and they're not going to fulfill all your desires and all your dreams, now you can be very bitter and hostile and have difficulties in your relationships. So the Buddha provides you solutions of how to solve all of this. And what you do is you cultivate the wisdom to be able to train your mind. Essentially what he's doing is he's helping you to understand what's called the natural laws of existence, where you can understand how the world is. The Buddha doesn't describe the way the world should be, and if everybody learns and does what he says, then the world will become peaceful. That's not what he's actually doing. He's explaining to you the way the world is so that you can understand these natural laws around you and your mind can awaken to this wisdom, because it's a real struggle and very difficult to live in a world that you don't understand. How many times have you thought about, I just don't understand why my mom does that. I just don't understand. Or I don't understand why my dad does that, or my brothers or my sisters. Or you watch the news and you're like, I just don't understand why people do that, right? This is because the mind doesn't understand the world that it lives in. So it's a real struggle to live in a world that you don't understand. It's very difficult. So what you're doing when we talk about awakening to enlightenment is you're cultivating wisdom about the natural laws of existence to understand the world around you and how your mind functions. And then when you train your mind, you can train your mind to be calm and peaceful and joyful. You can have this calmness and composure, especially in difficult situations where no matter what's happening, your mind won't be shaken up by that thing. So this just comes through training of the mind. So if during meditation you experienced a bombardment of thoughts where it was just like thought, that's normal when you first get started. Or if you had a thought and then you indulge in that thought for a period of time, and then like 2 or 3 minutes down the road, you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Let me bring my mind back. This is very common in meditation. So you're not bad at meditation. You haven't done anything wrong. It's just that your mind is untrained and it's not well disciplined and you don't have control of your mind. But you can change all of that, right? You're not going to be an expert at anything the first time you try it, right? Everything you've learned, it's been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, whether it's learning to read and write English or understanding English, whether it's a job or occupation. It's been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And your journey to enlightenment is the same way. One of the biggest myths about the Buddha's life is that he sat under a tree, he meditated, and he instantly got to enlightenment. This isn't actually true. He gradually trained his mind over 6 years to get to enlightenment. And you're going to need to do the same thing. It may or may not take 6 years, but it's going to be a multi-year pursuit. It's not a 1 week thing. It's not a 1 month thing. It's not a 1 year thing. It's going to take you gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, but you're going to see incremental improvement to the condition of your mind as you're progressing closer and closer to this enlightened mental state. So in the meditation, you're cutting off anything and everything that comes up in the mind, because you're building this quality to be able to have mindfulness, to be able to observe the mind and notice what's going on and have awareness, to have concentration, and then to be able to easily let go, let go, let go. So if 20, 30, 50 times during your meditation you had to let go, this is actually very good for your mind, because in daily life your mind doesn't want to let go. You see that pair of shoes and you want them so bad, or that new job, or that new boyfriend or girlfriend, you just want it so bad. You got to train your mind to let go, right? So in daily life, with the practice of meditation, day by day, you're gradually training your mind. Now in daily life, you have more mindfulness or awareness of mind. You have more concentration. You gradually build up those qualities. And then when you're out and about in your day-to-day life and you see your mind's longing, yearning, and chasing after something, you can cut it off and let it go, if you've been training your mind this way regularly and building up your practice. So in meditation, you're cutting off anything and everything because you're building the quality to be able to let go. But in daily life, you're just cutting off the unwholesome qualities that are arising. If you have a wholesome quality or wholesome thought, like, hey, you'd like to take your friend out to lunch, or you'd like to call your mom up and check in on her and see how she's doing, you don't need to cut that off in daily life. That's only in meditation you're cutting that off because you're trying to build the ability to cut things off. So you're exercising your mind in one way and you're practicing a little bit different, where in daily life you're just cutting off the unwholesome thoughts. And this is very much like a professional athlete. If I was a pole vaulter, for example, I would have the sport of pole vaulting, but in the gym I would do one thing, which is maybe like weight training, agility training, cardiovascular training, but my sport looks very different than what I'm doing in the gym. And the same thing is true when you're training your mind. You exercise it in one way in meditation, and then you practice slightly different in daily life. But you have those qualities of mindfulness, concentration, and the ability to easily let go. So I'm going to share with you guys some teachings today that are the misunderstandings of Gotama Buddhist teachings. I'm going to switch over to some visual aids here so that the people online can see what I'm sharing. All throughout this program, I've been teaching students about what it takes to get to enlightenment and how to actually train your mind to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state. And now here at the end of our program, I teach students these misunderstandings of Gotama Buddhist teachings. But in order to teach you the misunderstandings of Gotama Buddhist teachings, I'm going to teach you a little bit about why there are these misunderstandings in the teachings of the Buddha, just to give you kind of an overview of what you'll see in the world about Buddhism. And then I'll teach you about these misunderstandings. So there's three main schools of Buddhist teachings that you'll see in the world. You'll see what's called Theravada Buddhism, which is primarily hosted in South Asia and Southeast Asia. So places like Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Southern Vietnam, Sri Lanka, places like this are like the real focal points for this tradition of Buddhism. But in reality, it's really been spread all throughout the world. There's places all over the world that practice Theravada Buddhism. This school or this tradition of Buddhist teachings, the word Theravada means teachings of the elders. This is considered to be the form of Buddhist teachings that is closest to what the Buddha taught during his lifetime. And they consider the Pali Canon the original source teachings of the Buddha. The Pali Canon is 45 volumes of books that are about this thick, and it documents the teachings of the Buddha during his lifetime. And this is what the Theravada tradition considers to be the original teachings of the Buddha, is this Pali Canon. So they will study this form of Buddhism through the Pali Canon. And in this particular tradition, they're not interested in changing the teachings or modifying the teachings, because they feel that whatever the Buddha did in order to get to enlightenment, that's what's going to lead to your enlightenment too, that they're not interested in modifying or changing his teachings. So this is the Theravada tradition of teachings, and this is what you see throughout Thailand by and large. Then you've got what's called Mahayana Buddhism, which is primarily hosted in East Asia. This is like China. You'll see a lot of Mahayana Buddhism in China. You'll see it in northern Vietnam. But in reality, it's spread all throughout the world, just like all these other traditions. But Mahayana Buddhism comes about 500 to 1,000 years after the death of the Buddha. The Buddha died over 2,500 years ago, and he taught in what we refer to as Nepal or Northeast India. And that at that time, those lines didn't exist between countries. It was just different kingdoms. And from there, when he died 2,500 years ago, the teachings started spreading. And as they spread, they were modified. They were changed. So the Mahayana tradition, that it came about 500 to 1,000 years after the death of the Buddha, has been changed, where you see different things like worship and ceremonies and things like this that are part of that tradition, and other things that we could talk about if you guys would like. And then there's something called Vajrayana Buddhism. This comes about 1,000 years after the death of the Buddha. This is where you'll see primarily hosted in Tibet, Bhutan, Mongolia, and the Russian Republic of Kalmykia. Here you'll see lots of modifications to the teachings of the Buddha. There's lots of deities that they worship, lots of different prayer, things like this, things that the Buddha never actually really taught. But you'll see this being practiced in this tradition of Buddhist teachings. And then there's various branches off of all of these. There's probably a good 200 or 300 different traditions of Buddhist teachings, and they're all spawned off of these three main schools. Some people refer to the Theravada tradition as the lesser vehicle or Hinayana, but this is a way of degrading the Theravada tradition. And person who's enlightened, they don't degrade and diminish other people or things like this. So I wouldn't suggest that you refer to it as the lesser vehicle or Hinayana. Theravada is a better way to refer to this tradition. And then the Mahayana tradition, some people refer to it as the greater vehicle. Some people think that you can get to enlightenment more quickly that way. And then there's the Vajrayana Buddhism, which some people refer to as the lightning fast vehicle, which they think they can get to enlightenment even faster if they practice the Vajrayana tradition. But anybody who's trying to get to enlightenment fast hasn't actually understood enlightenment. That is gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual practice. It's not about hurry up and get somewhere. It's about gradually developing your mind and gradually getting to this point where it's stable and steady and unshakable. So this lesser vehicle, greater vehicle, and lightning fast vehicle, I don't suggest you think about that or even subscribe to it, but I teach it to you because you're going to hear other people refer to it this way. Where in reality, if you're doing rites or rituals and ceremonies and worship, which Mahayana Buddhism and Vajrayana Buddhism typically do quite a bit, those actually don't lead to enlightenment. The Buddha teaches that it's cultivating wisdom and training the mind that's going to actually lead to your enlightenment. And you can see that to be true just in the short time that we've spent together so far, that you might have came here not realizing what's actually causing your anger and your sadness and frustration. You might have firmly believed that other people are causing your anger and sadness and frustration. But when you awaken to the wisdom of the Buddha, you can see that your own mind is causing your own discontentedness. It's that craving, the desire, the longing, the yearning, and you're not believing the teachings of the Buddha. In the Theravada tradition, there are no beliefs. We don't believe anything. In the Mahayana tradition and the Vajrayana tradition, there's a lot of beliefs, certain things that you're believing. And with belief, you don't know what's true and you don't know what's false. But when you can cultivate wisdom, you know what's true and you know what's false. So when I share with you that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings, I don't encourage you to believe that at all. You should never believe anything I say or anything I write in books or anything like that or anything anybody else shares about the teachings of the Buddha. You should never believe those teachings. You can independently verify what I'm sharing with you about your mind causing your own discontentedness by looking at a recent example when you've been angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. It might have been this morning, it might have been yesterday or last week. At that time, you might have been trying to blame somebody else for the feelings that you were experiencing. This is typical of the unenlightened mind. But now with these fresh eyes, with this new wisdom, being able to see more clearly, look at that situation that you experienced anger and frustration. If you would have got what you wanted in that situation, you would have got happy or excited or elated. But because you didn't get what you wanted, you got irritated or annoyed or disappointed or some other discontent feeling. You can look at that situation and see it for yourself. And where you're having difficulties, you can reach out to a teacher who will help you. Because when the mind's craving, it's wanting something to be permanent. The mind is longing, yearning. I want these shoes. I want this boyfriend. I want this job. But nothing around you is permanent. So for example, if you've had grandparents pass away, or your mom or dad or your brothers or sisters, and you were sad or feeling grief during that time, oftentimes the mind thinks that it's love that's causing that. Love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Love doesn't cause painful feelings. What's causing the painful feelings is the craving, the desire, the attachment, wanting things to be permanent. And if you get what you want, you get things that are permanent, then you feel happy. And when you don't get what you want, then you experience these painful feelings of sadness, anger, frustration, and others. But the thing is that everything around you is impermanent. Grandma and grandpa are impermanent. Mom and dad are impermanent. They're not permanent. They're temporary. Your brothers and sisters, your friends, your family members, they're all impermanent. Because they were born, they have to die. Every single one of us have to die. But if your mind's holding on and wanting them to be permanent, when they're alive, you'll feel happy. But then when they die and you experience this impermanence, your mind doesn't like that. So it can be experiencing sadness or grief or despair. Or say that you ever went to a wedding. If you were ever sad at a wedding, you can see that your mind is holding on to this person, wanting them to be permanent. And when they go off into the world with somebody else, this represents impermanence, and your mind doesn't like this. Or say that you went to university and your parents dropped you off. Maybe you or your family were maybe crying or upset. This is because the mind's holding on and not wanting this relationship to separate. Or say you buy a brand new car and you get all these pleasant feelings about this brand new car. And now when you park it at a store and you go inside and you come out and you see a scratch on the car, if you get frustrated, it's not the scratch that's causing the frustration. And it's not the person who caused the scratch. Whoever scratched your car, that's not what's causing you to be angry or frustrated. It's the mind craving permanence, wanting this car to be permanently beautiful. The unenlightened mind doesn't understand everything around you is impermanent. It's craving, it's holding on. It's wanting this car to be permanently beautiful. But it can't be. It'd be wonderful if nobody ever scratched your car. But we're not talking about what's wise or unwise here. We're talking about true reality. The true reality is that you live in an impermanent world. It's not possible for your car to be permanently beautiful. It's just not possible. But the unenlightened mind will want that, and it's craving and it's longing and it's holding on. So what the Theravada tradition is teaching is this various wisdom about the way the world is, so that you can see the truth for yourself through your own direct reflection. And now you can awaken to this wisdom, and you can make wiser choices in the world. Because when you lack wisdom, you're going to naturally make unwise decisions, and it's going to lead to unwholesome results. As you make unwise decisions, you'll experience various unwholesome results. But when you have wisdom and you make wise decisions, it'll lead to wholesome results in your life. You'll be able to get to a point where your life is at ease. You don't have hostility and frustration and irritation and annoyance in your life anymore. So the Theravada tradition is helping you to awaken to the wisdom of the way the world is, the natural laws of existence. There's no rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship or anything like that in the teachings of the Buddha. He never taught any of those things, because the ultimate goal is to cultivate wisdom in the mind. And with this wisdom, that's what's going to help you to then navigate the world more readily and now experience more wholesome results, because you're making wiser decisions. So I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions about any of these three traditions before I move on and start explaining to you some of the misunderstandings. So again, here at the temple, you can use the microphones, and those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So do you guys have any questions that you would like to ask at this point? Yes, sir. You're welcome to have a seat. Yeah, just keep your mic with you. It's on. Yep. It was. Not now. No. Just press the button on the front. Here, bring it to me. I'll show you how to do it.
Oh,
there
it's
you
on.
go. There you go.
Thank you so much. I'm wondering about the Theravada tradition and what you said about wholesome and not wholesome results. And I think I have a misunderstanding, or I'm trying to understand better how you also mentioned the Theravada tradition doesn't really have any particular beliefs, in contrast to the Mahayana and the Vajrayana Buddhism.
Right.
And in my mind, I feel like there's some tension there between if there are wholesome and unwholesome results or practices. Doesn't that necessitate a belief system? And how do you decide or judge what's a wholesome or unwholesome results for a wholesome and unwholesome practice?
Sure. So there's no beliefs, and there's also no judgment either. You're not judging other people and looking down on people or looking up to people. That's not what the Buddha taught. When we talk about wholesome or unwholesome results, what we're referring to is the natural law of Gama, or some people refer to it as karma. The word karma is from Sanskrit language. The word Gama is from the Pali language. So people who study the original teachings of the Buddha will tend to use the word Gama. What this refers to is cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions. Sometimes people think this Gama or karma is punishment and rewards, or mystical and magical, and there's some being that's overseeing this and controlling it, or who's to blame or who's at fault. But that's not what the natural law of Gama is at all. It's literally cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. So for example, I think this is your girlfriend or your wife or a friend or somebody. You are obviously polite, kind, friendly, respectful with her, so she's comfortable to spend time with you, right? And she's probably the same way with you, so you're comfortable to spend time with her. This is your results of your decisions. This is your Gama. Or like you've traveled here to Thailand, so you had to make a certain amount of money somewhere and providing some kind of benefit to somebody, and somebody gave you some money, and now you are able to come here to travel to Thailand. This is your Gama. This is the results of your decisions. And when you make harmless decisions, you will experience wholesome results. When you make harmful decisions, you will experience unwholesome results. Because you're harming other beings in the world, this harm is going to come back to you. So this isn't a belief that you have. This is something you can see for yourself with true reality, that everything you experience in life is a result of your decisions. Sometimes people think that there's good luck or bad luck, or there's destiny, or there's fate, or things like this. But this isn't actually true at all. Everything that we experience is a result of our decisions. Like that hat you're wearing, that's your decision. The glasses you're wearing, the clothes you're wearing, your hairstyle, or you have a little bit of a beard starting to come in and a mustache. This is all the results of your decisions. Or what you ate for breakfast this morning, or maybe you didn't eat for breakfast. That was your decisions, and you'll experience the results of that. So the wholesome and unwholesome results that we're talking about, it's based on either wise decision-making or unwise decision-making. And what the Buddha does throughout his teachings is he explains to you this natural law so that you can see what's wise and unwise. And then based on the decisions that you make, you're going to experience whatever results are coming back to you. And then you can take those teachings through intellectually learning them and understanding them. Then you can reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you can practice them, and then you see the truth that your mind in your life is becoming more peaceful and more joyful because of this understanding of navigating the world and uprooting these pollutions out of the mind. That through the training, as you uproot these pollutions, you can see the world more clearly, and now you can navigate the world making wise decisions to the point where you're only experiencing wholesome results coming back to you. Yes, ma'am.
How does disease or sickness factor into this, given that a cancer diagnosis is probably not something that is based on a previous decision of yours?
Sure. So there's 5 things that are called the unobtainable, that no matter how enlightened you are, you can't avoid these 5 things. It's aging, it's sickness, it's death, it's destruction. You're going to experience certain things are going to be destroyed, and loss. You're going to lose things. This is all because of the universal truth of impermanence, that things are constantly changing. Nothing around you is permanent. So this physical body is impermanent. It will experience sickness, like you hear here with my nose, right? No matter how enlightened you are, you can't escape the sickness. But some cancers are actually decisions that we're making, right? So like here in Thailand, they experience a lot of stomach cancer because they eat so much grilled meat. They eat a lot of meat. So they experience a lot of stomach cancer here. Or like at one time when there was a lot of smoking going on in the world, and we have lung cancer. This is based on the choice to smoke cigarettes. Now someone's experiencing lung cancer. So while the body can't be permanently healthy, there is wise decisions that we can make to make it more healthy and sustain our health for longer periods of time. We know like drinking water and fruit juices and good quality food and exercise and things like this are going to improve the health of the body, and it'll elongate our life. But also, if we go out in the world and we're bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive with people, and we're injuring people and we're killing people, we're likely to get killed ourselves. This is the results of our decisions, our Gama. So, like, for example, a government could tell us to go off to another country and kill those people. And the government can say, we're not going to prosecute you for murder if you go kill those people. But this is a human law. And human laws, they're imperfect. So they're not administered fairly, they're not created fairly. It's just impossible because humans are prone to error. But the natural law of Gama, it's functioning at all times, and it's completely operating independently of any person or any government. So while somebody could tell you, as a government could say, go kill those people over there and we won't prosecute you for murder, but if you come here to our country and kill people, we're going to prosecute you for murder. The natural law of Gama is there showing you that, hey, you can't escape. You're killing. So if you go off to war, you're very likely to get killed yourself, to get injured, to potentially get addicted to substances. You could potentially commit suicide. You could have, brain injuries or mental health issues, all kinds of different challenges because of that. And that's the Gama. Because the individual is causing harm, this harm is then coming back to them. So this natural law is functioning at all times. It's affecting you whether you realize it or not. This is the natural law of gravity, just like the natural law of gravity. When you grow up, you didn't understand the natural law of gravity, and it affected you whether you're aware of it or not. And when you lacked wisdom of this natural law, you made unwise decisions. You fell down, you hit your head, you broke toys. We all did, right? And then slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law. We didn't believe the natural law of gravity. We saw the truth for ourselves, that it's true, right? We can see that, yeah, this is actually true, this real thing. And as we cultivated wisdom of this natural law, we started navigating the world more readily, more easily. We started making wiser decisions. We started tying our shoes a bit tighter. We started looking at the surface of the sidewalk as we walked. We stopped being so giddy and bouncy as a little kid, and we experienced improved results because of our wisdom of this natural law. We didn't fall down as much. We didn't break our toys. For example, here I put my glass of water behind me, not because anybody ever told me to do that, but because of the wisdom of the natural law of gravity. I know if I put it right here in front of me, I'm more likely to knock it over, right? This is wise decisions that you make because you understand this natural law. So this natural law of Gama is affecting you whether you realize it or not. And when you're struggling and having difficulties in the world, this is your mind lacking wisdom, that you just don't understand what you don't understand. So that anger, the frustration, the irritation, and all those other discontent feelings, it's showing you that your mind is not yet fully awake, that you don't have the wisdom to navigate this world in the way that you could. If you learned and you practiced, you'd be able to get to the point where you don't experience that frustration and agitation and annoyance and things like this. But you need the wisdom. Like with the natural law of gravity, you can now climb ladders, you can ride bicycles and motorbikes, you can get on airplanes, you can travel all over the place because you understand this natural law of gravity, and you make wise decisions now, and you experience only wholesome results related to the natural law of gravity. But there's these other natural laws that your mind hasn't awakened to, and that's why you don't believe them. You learn them, you reflect on them, and you practice, and then you can see the truth for yourself that they indeed exist. And then as you navigate the world more wisely, you'll experience the wholesome results because of that wisdom, just like the natural law of gravity. Any other questions here? Yes, ma'am. I don't think it's on. Yep, it's on.
Okay, so I wanted to know if expectations are part of Buddhism at all.
So expectations are part of that craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning. We also use words like wants, expectations. So when you have an expectation of something to occur, if your expectation's met, you get happy. And if it doesn't, you get sad or angry or frustrated. And then other people will try to put their expectations on you too. And you might adopt their expectations as your own. And now if you accomplish that, you'll get happy. If you don't, you get sad and frustrated. But you can get rid of all of that. You can train your mind to get rid of that and then just make wise decisions to work towards a certain goal, an objective, or an interest, rather than expecting it or wanting it or longing and yearning for it. That would be one side. But then on the other side, you're kind of indifferent and you don't really care less about what's going on in the world. That's like two opposite sides of the spectrum. But you can practice where you have this goal or this objective or this interest that you're working towards. And now your mind can remain peaceful and joyful, because if you're working towards a certain goal or objective, say you have a goal that you would like to accomplish this thing in 4 weeks. If you accomplish it, great, that's fine, but you don't get so excited about it, because then in another situation where you can't accomplish a certain goal, you'll get frustrated or agitated. But if you can't get to that goal in 4 weeks, then it's like, all right, well, I got 80% of the way there. Let me just adjust my timeline. Let me try 6 weeks or 8 weeks, and I'll just keep working towards that goal. But otherwise, you might put pressure on yourself and really try to force yourself to be able to do one particular thing or another. Or other people might be trying to put their expectations on you, and you don't like that, right? People don't like it when someone's trying to force you to do something. So you would like to get rid of all those expectations, that longing, that yearning, that chasing, that wanting, and just make wise decisions. But that's where the Buddha's path is. He's going to help you to be able to understand that wise decision making. He doesn't tell you what to do. He doesn't give you any rules or commandments. He's just giving you wise decision making, and then whatever you choose to do is up to you. So what a Buddha does is they awaken to this enlightened mental state by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides, and then they share those independently discovered teachings with countless people during their life, and countless people get to enlightenment during the lifetime of a Buddha. And then they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people can get to enlightenment after their death. And you'll know that your mind's enlightened because it'll be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You haven't experienced any anger, any sadness, or any frustration. You'll know your mind's enlightened at that point. And this is from all the work that you've been doing in order to get there. So you're not going to just stumble into enlightenment by mistake. You'll actually actively be working towards it. But the big crucial aspect of it is to get rid of those wants and expectations where you pursue things as a goal, as an objective or interest. You're welcome. You have a question, ma'am?
Hello, I'm Amy from China, and I have been engaged in meditation for 1 year, and it brought me a lot of things like happiness and insight and focus, and a lot of it let me and live in left at the moment. So my question is, does medication based on scientists? I mean, it based on like the brain, the structure of brain, or the human factor.
The human what?
Human factor. Does medication based on any scientist theories?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Based on science, right?
Like brain, the structure of brain.
Okay. So there's the brain, which is the physical organ in the body, and then there's the mind, which is non-physical. It's non-tangible. It's not something you can see or you can touch. And these are two different things. Oftentimes people think it's the same thing, but they're actually two different things. So you're training the mind in this path to enlightenment, and it's affecting the brain. The Buddha couldn't describe this during his lifetime because it was 2,500 years ago, but nowadays we can see this through MRIs and CAT scans and other devices, that as you're training the mind, there's these physical changes that are occurring to the brain in a positive way. Doctors and scientists are showing us this. And once you get to a certain point in your training, your physical structures of your brain have changed to a certain degree that they never go back to the way that they were before. And this is the same thing that the Buddha talked about during his lifetime related to the mind, but now we can actually see it in relationship to the brain too, because we have technology to be able to see that. So this is why the individual who is training their mind is going to experience improved focus, concentration, clarity, deep memory, because they're getting rid of this pollution of the mind, and it's having these physical changes that are occurring to the brain as well. And now the mind and the brain is going to function more optimally. Is that what you were asking me, ma'am? Is that what you're asking? Okay, very well. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to move into talking about misunderstandings of the teachings of the Buddha. And the vast majority of these misunderstandings are actually within the Theravada tradition. And within this Theravada tradition here in Thailand and throughout the world where it's being practiced, there's a lot of misunderstandings that are being practiced, not only in these other traditions, but even in the Theravada tradition as well. Would you mind turning off that mic behind you? There you go. within the Theravada tradition, there's certain misunderstandings, and it's important for you to understand those misunderstandings because it's ultimately going to help you understand the path to enlightenment more clearly. One of the things that a Buddha is doing when they're alive is they're putting these lights down along the path and illuminating it, making it very clear for people of what it takes to get to enlightenment. So one thing is learning what the teachings of the Buddha are, but one of the ways to understand the path to enlightenment is to understand what the path to enlightenment isn't. What is the teachings of the Buddha that aren't the teachings of the Buddha? So when you go into temples, one of the first things you might see is rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. And what I'm sharing with you is these aren't the teachings of the Buddha. Even here in Thailand, you'll see certain rites or rituals and ceremonies and worship. This is a common one, number one, which is called, in Thai, we call Gotama. And this translates to pouring water ceremony. What people believe who are practicing this is they believe that if you make an offering to a teacher or a temple or a monk of some donation or some supplies, that you've created this merit where you're now benefiting the continuation of the teachings of the Buddha and sharing the teachings with others because you're making a place available to be able to share the teachings with others. So like if you're donating funds here and we pay for the electric or the water or different things, people call this merit, right? This is the way to help the teachings of the Buddha continue in the world so other people can learn and practice and train their mind to eliminate sadness, anger, frustration in others. But where it diverges from the Buddhist teachings is once you make that offering, some people will ask you to go get this little bowl and this little thing of water, and they think if you pour this water out while the monks are chanting, that you're now transferring your benefits of practicing that merit to somebody else, that you're now transferring the benefits of what you just did by practicing merit, that you're transferring this to your dead relatives, usually is what they think. But this isn't actually true. If you study the original words of the Buddha, he talks about how any decisions you make, they affect you. It's your karma. You can't produce karma for other people. It's not possible. You're the one who's making decisions. It's the results of your decisions. It's not the results of other people's decisions. And if you understand the benefit of practicing generosity, because that's what giving and sharing and producing merit is, at the heart of that is practicing generosity. The benefit that you're experiencing is that you're training your mind to let go. So we have breathing mindfulness meditation to train the mind to let go. But when you practice giving and sharing of your time, your effort, your energy, your resources, more than is strictly required in any given situation, without any expectation of anything in return, this is training your mind to let go. So that craving, desire, attachment that's producing the discontent feelings, it's the meditation that's going to help you eliminate that, and other things as well, but it's the generosity that's really helping you with that as well. So you can't transfer that benefit to somebody else if you understand what the real benefit of generosity is. So this is a misunderstanding of the teachings of the Buddha, and you'll see this very commonly throughout the Theravada tradition, that they think that you're transferring this merit or you're transferring the benefits of what you did in this life to somebody else. And this is a rite, a ritual, or a ceremony that is being conducted, and it's not something that the Buddha taught. You can see in his actual words where he shares that he doesn't practice any rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship because his ultimate goal is to guide you to wisdom and helping you understand the wisdom about the world around you. And there's no rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship that's going to produce wisdom for you. Another one you might see is number 2, which we refer to in Thai as Namon. Namon is that during an event, if you're around ordained practitioners, they will take this end of what looks like a broom to you guys probably, but it's kind of like this straw. They dip it in water and they sprinkle the water around the group. And what they've done before that is they've done some chanting, they've burned some candles and dripped the wax into the bowl. And they think that this water is now blessed water. It's like holy water essentially. And now they think that if they dip this broom thing into the water and they sprinkle it around the room, if this water gets on you, it's supposed to like bless you. But the Buddha describes this during his lifetime because this was going on during his lifetime too. And he explains how he doesn't do this. He doesn't practice it. But people nowadays are practicing it because they've gotten farther and farther away from the teachings of the Buddha. There's nothing about sprinkling water on you that is going to help you cultivate wisdom. It's not going to make you more pure. It's not going to make you more holy. It's not going to help you make wiser decisions in your life. It's not going to eliminate your sadness and your anger and your frustration and all these other discontent feelings. But these are beliefs that you see amongst some individuals that are practicing this kind of thing. And then the third one here, in Thai, we call sai sin. We might translate that to be sacred thread, where if you go visit a teacher or a Dane practitioner, they might tie a string around your wrist. And once again, people feel like they've been blessed or something like this, and that somehow this is going to produce some kind of benefit. But again, there's no wisdom in that, right? There's just a belief there that, okay, this string is somehow going to help me. Well, if you had a really great talk with the teacher and you've learned certain wisdom during your talk with the teacher, that's what's going to help you. Tying the string on your wrist isn't actually going to help you. Now, maybe if you look at that string and it reminds you of something that the teacher taught you, okay, but it's the wisdom that's actually truly helping you. The string itself isn't going to help you. And all of these things, I used to do these things at different times, so that's how I understand them. I used to do Gotama, I used to do the Namon, I used to do the Sai Sen, and I could see that it doesn't help train the condition of the mind. So if you're doing those things now, it's okay. That's where everybody is in their practice. There's no judgment from one person to another about what one person's doing versus another. That's not what this is about. This is just about informing individuals of what truly is going to lead to your enlightenment. Because if an individual believed that these things were going to lead to some beneficial result, you might do these things without realizing what the real problem is or the real goal on the path to enlightenment, which is eliminating these pollutions of the mind. So these are three things that you're going to see pretty commonly in the Theravada tradition. You might even see them in other traditions as well. These are part of the rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. And the Buddha taught even to get to the first stage of enlightenment, you need to eliminate rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship from your practice. If you were conducting rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, and you were believing that it was these things that are leading to your enlightenment, you're not even going to be able to get to the first stage of enlightenment because you're not understanding the true problem, which is this unknowing of true reality or this lack of wisdom in the mind. Because the mind lacks wisdom, it will struggle, it will have difficulties. So usually before someone's learned the teachings of the Buddha, they don't understand what's causing their anger, their sadness, or their frustration. You might firmly believe that other people are causing you to be angry. And this is where somebody might go out into the world and try to convince other people to do things your way. But the problem with that is there's 8 billion people in the world, and you can't train 8 billion people to do things your way. You're not going to get to peace that way. But you can train one mind. There is one mind that you can train. And if you know what mind that is, and you can train that mind, and you can learn how to train it, that's how you actually get to peace. But these 8 billion minds that are other places in the world, you can't actually train them. Each individual has to choose to train their own mind, and that's what helps them to get to peace. But these rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship isn't going to accomplish that. It's not going to help you to get to wisdom. So any questions on any of these three? Yes, ma'am.
Water or the string, does that mean that you have to do something that people believed? As long as they believed, it will help them. Like you have to do something that they believe it's gonna bless them, or
with belief, you don't know what's true or false. And I encourage you to not even believe me about these things, but look at it yourself and see how when you cultivate wisdom, you make wiser decisions in life and it produces more wholesome results for you. No matter what it is, whether it's learning English or some job or occupation, as you've cultivated wisdom in your life has just gotten better and better and better about certain things. So while people might be performing these things or experiencing these things or doing these things, it's not going to lead to wisdom. So no matter what, these are not going to result in any kind of wisdom. If somebody gets that water sprinkled on them and now they believe they're more holy, and now they go out into the world and they decide to speak a little bit nicer to people, they decide to be a little bit kinder and more polite and more respectful, that's what's actually leading to the improvements in their life, not the water itself, but the choice to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful, and then choosing to do that. That's the cause and effect, or the action and result. The result of water being sprinkled on you is you get wet. That's the result of water, right? That's the cause and effect. And you can clean your hands and you can clean your body. That's the result of water, but it doesn't cultivate wisdom.
does that mean we can do whatever things that people think is good for them?
any aspect of the path to enlightenment, it's about your own personal choice. So it's not about a teacher telling you what you should or shouldn't do. It's not about me giving you rules or commandments. There's nobody at the top of Buddhism that's telling everybody what they should or shouldn't do. You're your own individual person on your own journey to enlightenment, and a teacher is like a tour guide or providing you the guidance to help you understand how to get to enlightenment, but you're doing all the work to be able to get to enlightenment. So what you choose to do is up to you. It's your life, it's your decisions, it's your results. And what I'm sharing with you is helping you to be able to see that these types of things aren't going to lead to your enlightenment. But say you went to a temple. Sometimes I take students on tours to temples, and while we're there, we just happen to be sitting in the proximity of a monk, and he happens to sprinkle some water on us. It's not like we're going to melt or anything like that. It's like, all right, well, we just got wet. We usually smile and laugh, and, these kinds of things. It's not like, you're going to divulge into this delusion thinking of that this is going to somehow benefit you. So whether you choose to do these things or not, it's your choice. What I'm sharing with you is none of this is going to lead to wisdom, and it's not going to produce that enlightened mental state where the mind's peaceful, joyful for the rest of your life. You're welcome. Okay, let's see. I don't see any questions here online either. So let's move to the next one. I've got 3 more things here. Here, number 4, 5, and 6 is part of the book, this chapter 24. Here I talk about ordained practitioners, which we often refer to as bhikkhus or bhikkhunis. The bhikkhus are the male ordained practitioners. Bhikkhunis are the female ordained practitioners. You'll see these all throughout the world, wearing different color robes, wearing different things, having different practices. Ordained practitioners are oftentimes taught various things based on wherever they're staying at a temple. There's no set teachings that the entire world practices. You might think that every ordained practitioner must know the teachings of the Buddha, but this isn't actually true. That would be permanence if every single ordained practitioner understood the teachings of the Buddha. You might even think that every ordained practitioner studies the original words of the Buddha. This isn't actually true. I've been to over 200 temples in my life, and there's only one temple I've ever been to that studies the original teachings of the Buddha. That's less than 1%. So it's very rare to find ordained practitioners that nowadays are studying the original teachings of the Buddha. The books of the teachings of the Buddha, again, are 45 books that are about this thick. Here in Thailand, if you printed them all out, it would cost about 3 months of your salary. And you probably don't own any book collections that are 3 months of your salary. So the average Thai person doesn't have the original teachings of the Buddha, and even the average temple doesn't have access to the original teachings of the Buddha. So the way the teachings have been handed down from generation to generation has largely been through oral tradition. That from the lifetime of the Buddha until now, people have been sharing the teachings orally. And because of that, things are easy to be changed, either accidentally, inadvertently changed, or overtly changed, because there's no written documentation that these people are going back to. There is the Pali Canon that people who study this tradition of Theravada teachings will use, and you can see that very clearly in what the Buddha taught and what he didn't teach. But for the most part, ordained practitioners aren't studying the original words of the Buddha. They're living at some temple, and they're studying whoever is the master teacher at that particular temple, whoever the leader is. They're going to be studying with that person. They're most likely not going to be studying the original words of the Buddha. And because of this, you're going to see ordained practitioners doing various things that aren't the original teachings of the Buddha. You might see ordained practitioners who are smoking or using drugs or alcohol. You might see them occasionally, I've seen on the news where they've maybe abused some children sexually. You can see these kinds of things. That's not what the Buddha taught. And just because those individuals are choosing to do those things, that's their choice and their decisions. You're on your own journey to enlightenment, your own independent journey. Just because somebody else chooses to do something unwise doesn't mean that that needs to affect you. If they're choosing to do that, that's affecting them, and they're going to experience the results of that. Thailand takes those kinds of things very seriously. If they find an ordained practitioner who's doing those kinds of things, they will take action to correct it. pretty readily. But even very simply, you'll see in the ordained lifestyle that individuals will sometimes not respect household practitioners. So for example, if you're around an ordained practitioner and you why an ordained practitioner, they may not why you back. Most likely they're not, because they're taught that they're higher than other people and that household practitioners are below them. This isn't what the Buddha taught. If you look at what the Buddha taught, he taught that the ordained practitioners is the lowest form of livelihood. This is why he was once a prince destined to become a king, and he stepped down into homelessness in order to live this homeless life where he walked through the street and accepted offerings from people to sustain his life. So he didn't put himself above people. But unfortunately nowadays, a lot of people have put the ordained practitioners up really high. In order to get to enlightenment, you need to think of yourself as equal. Everybody's equal, and be humble. But if you're around ordained practitioners and they happen to not why you, or they happen to not respect you, understand that that's their practice. That's not what the Buddha taught, but that's what they're choosing to do. If you choose to respect them, that would be wise for you because you're choosing to respect them. So when I go around ordained practitioners, I will why to them because that's my practice. I'm interested in respecting everybody. I respect you just like I why'd you. I'm going to why other people too. I even why my son sometimes. I even refer to my son as yes, sir, no, sir sometimes. He's 11 years old, right? So you can be polite, kind, friendly, respectful with everybody without an expectation that they need to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to you. Because as you put out more and more politeness, kindness, friendliness, and respect, that's what will come back to you. So if other people choose to not be respectful, that's their choice and it's affecting them. But by you choosing to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful, that will produce wholesome results in your life. And sometimes ordained practitioners come here to study with me or they study with me online. So I share this teaching with you so that you can see the truth yourself, that these are actually the words of the Buddha around this particular topic that I'm talking about. Here, this one is titled, Gain, Honor, and Praise Are an Obstacle Even for an Arahant. An Arahant is an enlightened being. This is an individual who's eliminated all the 10 fetters. This is how they refer to an enlightened being during the lifetime of the Buddha. So here, the Buddha is teaching monks, gain, honor, and praise, I say, are an obstacle even for a monk who is an Arahant, one with taints destroyed. What he's saying is an enlightened being. Taints destroyed means you've eliminated all the 10 fetters, that your mind's completely purified. And the Buddha is saying, gain, honor, and praise is an obstacle for an enlightened being, someone who's eliminated all the 10 fetters. When this was said, the Venerable Ananda, who is one of the Buddha's closest students, asked the master teacher Gotama, why, Venerable Sir, are gain, honor, and praise an obstacle even for an Arahant with taints destroyed? Ananda's like, hold on a second. If somebody's enlightened and they've eliminated the 10 fetters and their mind's pure, why would gain, honor, and praise be an obstacle for them? Their mind would be peaceful and joyful. Why would gain, honor, and praise be an obstacle for them? And then the Buddha follows it up. He says, I do not say, Ananda, that gain, honor, and praise are an obstacle to his unshakable liberation of mind, but I say they are an obstacle to his attainment of those peaceful dwellings in this very life, which are achieved by one who resides diligent, dedicated, and determined. So dreadful, Ananda, are gain, honor, and praise, so bitter, vile, obstructive, to achieving the unsurpassed security from bondage. Okay, so let me explain this to you. He says, Ananda, I do not say that gain, honor, and praise are an obstacle to his unshakable liberation of mind, his unshakable mind, to this enlightened being's stable and steady mind. I didn't say that gain, honor, and praise are an obstacle for that. What he's saying is that they are an obstacle to his attainment of those peaceful dwellings. So you're not yet enlightened, but now you hear all this praise and all this gain and all this honor. Somebody's admiring you. Somebody's giving you compliments. Now your mind can be conceited. You can get arrogant and boastful. You can have ego where you're putting yourself above others. So when people praise you and they say, oh, you look so handsome in that shirt, or oh, you look so beautiful wearing those earrings, or oh, you do your job so well, you're so good at this job, you might notice this conceit kind of coming up in the mind, like, yeah, look at me, look how great I am. the Buddha is saying this is the problem. This is what happens. That gain, honor, and praise is a real problem. So as it relates to ordained practitioners, if individuals who are ordained choose to put themselves above others, this is an obstacle to their attainment of enlightenment. And that's why I share this here, so that any ordained practitioners that are studying with me, that you can learn to be humble and down to earth, not thinking of yourself above others, including the household practitioners. So the Buddha is saying this gain, honor, and praise is so bitter, vile, obstructive to achieving the unsurpassed security from bondage. That's enlightenment, because by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is now secure. It's protected. You no longer experience any bitterness or hostility or aggression or anger or any of those other discontent feelings. So therefore, Ananda, you should train yourselves thus. We will abandon the arisen gain, honor, and praise, and we will not let the arisen gain, honor, and praise persist, obsessing our mind. Thus should you train yourselves. So what he's saying is, when somebody compliments you, if somebody gives you gain, honor, and praise, don't let it obsess your mind. Cut it off. Let it go, right? Don't allow the mind to dwell in that conceit. Just be humble. That's what he's essentially teaching. And he teaches this in other parts of his teachings as well. And here's another one that he teaches on the same topic. This is titled, "This spiritual life is not lived for the sake of deceiving people." Monks, this spiritual life is not lived for the sake of deceiving people and persuading them, nor for the benefit of gain, honor, and praise, nor for the benefit of winning in debates, nor with the thought, "Let the people know me thus," but rather, this spiritual life is lived for the sake of restraint, abandoning, freedom from strong feelings, and eliminating the discontent feelings. So what he's saying here is, don't practice my teachings because you want people to honor you and respect you, right? He's saying do it so that you can get to this enlightened mental state. That's the reason to learn and practice his teachings. And also, don't learn his teachings in order to win in debates where you're fighting people and you're, showing how smart you are and how wise you are. Let the people know me thus. Look how wise I am. Look how smart I am. He's saying, no, don't practice my teachings because of that. Because by the time you're learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha very deeply, you're going to know things that other people don't know. You're going to have a lot of wisdom that other people don't have. And this is where the conceit can really kick in. You'll notice your mind becoming concentrated and focused and clear. And you'll see other people will be really struggling. Their mind will lack concentration. They'll be stumbling over their words. They'll have difficulties in life that just seem so easy and so simple to you. So the Buddha is saying, don't allow this gain, honor, and praise to obsess your mind, but learn my teachings so that you can get to enlightenment and eliminate these strong feelings and getting to this peaceful mental state. So this fifth one here that I'll share is about chanting or mantras. As you saw, I do chanting in the class and I teach students this. Chanting was something during the lifetime of the Buddha that was used in order to help people commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, they would recite his teachings, because in an oral tradition, this is what you have to be able to remember the teachings. They didn't have books and the ability to write things down. The technology to write things down existed in China 2,500 years ago, but it didn't exist in the region of the world that the Buddha was in. So the language that he spoke, it wasn't even a written language. They didn't even have a script, because they didn't have a reason to have a script, because they didn't have the technology to write things down. Eventually, the technology made its way to that region of the world, and they did write down the teachings of the Buddha, but initially they didn't have that. So all through the life of the Buddha, they just recited the teachings. He would teach like this, and then every 2 weeks, the students would come together and they would recite his teachings word for word for word for word. So this is how chanting started, that it was to commit the teachings to memory. And then nowadays, though, people think of these chants, or some people refer to them as mantras, almost like prayer or worship or something like this. Sometimes people think there's mystical or magical powers about these chants. You might visit a certain temple and they say, hey, we have this special chant. If you chant this chant every day, you'll get your boyfriend back, you'll get your girlfriend back, or you'll get more money, or you'll get this extra long life. Here, chant this chant. We're the only ones who know this. Chant this chant, right? Well, you can test these things for yourself, right? You can try to determine the truth, because what I'm going to share with you is none of that stuff is true. It's not actually possible to chant a chant and get your boyfriend back or your girlfriend back or more money or anything like this, or get an extra long life. That's what I'm going to teach you, that it's not true. But don't believe them and don't believe me either. Test it for yourself. If somebody tells you that you chant this extra long chant and you're going to get an extra long life, well, look around the temple. Do you see people that are 150 years old, 200 years old, 300 years old? If you do, then you know they're true, right? Because there's people there that have been chanting this for many generations, and now there's all these people that are 150, 200, 300 years old. But if you don't see those people, that means that it's not true, right? You're going to see people that are maybe 60, 70, 80. Yeah, that's normal. Or if they say, hey, this chant is going to help you get wealthy, well, everybody at that temple should be wealthy, right? There should be lots of wealth. But wealth isn't what's going to lead to your happiness. But nonetheless, you can see that you can independently verify things when people explain things to you and they say, this is going to accomplish this. Well, test it. Look around, see if that's the truth. What I'll share with you that chanting does is it helps to invigorate the mind. It helps to get awareness of the mind and awareness of the breath, that it helps you to ease into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation. You can chant and it will help you in meditation, but you can actually get to enlightenment without chanting. There's no requirement to actually chant in order to get to enlightenment. When you study the core central teaching of the Buddha, it's called the Eightfold Path. And in this Eightfold Path, he gives you 8 factors that if you train your mind in this way, it will produce enlightenment. And if you choose to do that, you can see that it indeed produces enlightenment. But out of these 8 factors, you won't see any factor that includes chanting, because chanting isn't required in order to get to enlightenment. There's people who are enlightened today who don't chant. So you don't have to chant in order to get to enlightenment. But if you would like to chant, I teach it in various courses and programs that I teach. I teach people how to chant. But then I teach you what it's really doing is kind of invigorating the mind, giving this awareness of the mind and awareness of the breath to get more benefit out of the meditation itself. And then you might see countless Buddhist statues, particularly in a place like here in Thailand. This might be the reason why you came to Thailand. So people like to come here and see these beautiful Buddhist statues. There's lots of Buddhist statues everywhere. And these Buddhist statues, if you understand the life story of the Buddha, they're usually capturing some moment in his life. And if you look at these statues, you can actually know what they're actually communicating in these statues. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, he never taught anybody to make a statue of him. So you don't have to have a Buddha statue in order to get to enlightenment. Nowadays, people have made Buddha statues of him. And the statues that you see actually don't even look the way that he looked during his lifetime. This is why statues in Thailand look one way, statues in China look another way, statues in Japan or other places, they look completely different. Because the people who were making statues of the Buddha, they actually didn't live during the lifetime of the Buddha. They didn't start making statues of him until about 200 or 300 years after his death. So the people who were actually making statues, they had never lived during his lifetime, so they didn't know what he looked like. And the way that they learned to make statues is they came in contact with the people in Greece who were making statues of their Greek gods. And these people who were Buddhists came in contact with these Greek people who were making statues of their Greek gods, and they were like, who do we have to make a statue of? Oh, the Buddha. Let's make a statue of the Buddha. So if you look at some of the original Buddha statues, they look very Greek. They look like they're inspired by Greek artists. But then when you see statues from China, the Buddha looks very Chinese. Or you see statues from Japan, he might look very Japanese, because the artist is wanting to reflect that the Buddha looks like their same ethnic group. But in reality, the Buddha doesn't look like any of those statues. I've never seen a statue that looks like the Buddha, because they'll typically put a crown on his head. The Buddha didn't walk around with a crown on his head. He was a prince destined to become a king during his lifetime, but he stepped down and stepped away from that. He actually shaved his hair. That's what you see here in this picture. This artwork was commissioned by a temple here in Thailand. They asked a Thai artist to draw a picture of the Buddha, and this artist looked at the original description that's in the original teachings where the Buddha describes what he looks like. You can see that description yourself in his original teachings, and the artist depicted that in an art form because the Buddha talks about shaving his hair. But when you walk around and you see all these statues, he has this crown on his head. So all those statues you see, the Buddha didn't actually look like that. He looked like you. He looked like me. He looked like a human being, just like you see here. So when you see these various statues, you can be sure that that's not what the Buddha looked like, because when you read the description of what he looked like in his original teachings, it doesn't describe what you see in the statues. And then sometimes people take this even further. You'll see people that believe that the spirit of the Buddha is in these statues. You'll see people feeding these statues, giving food or water or things like this, kind of gifts to these statues. You'll see people praying to these statues, asking this, the Buddha to create some kind of change in their life. But the Buddha never taught any of those kinds of things. You don't need a Buddha statue to get to enlightenment. He never taught to pray to him, to ask for him to intervene on your behalf. The Buddha came, he taught, he's dead, he's never coming back. He can't help you anymore. He taught his teachings. They absolutely lead to enlightenment. He did that through his 80 years of life. He taught from the age of 35 to the age of 80. He taught for 45 years. He's dead and gone. He shared his teachings. He did his work, and you'll never see him here in this world ever again. Right? So these statues and feeding the statues and all these kinds of things is not going to actually lead to your enlightenment. But I use this picture of the Buddha in order to humanize him so that you can see he looks just like you, he looks just like me, because that way you can have confidence that if he got to enlightenment, you can get to enlightenment too. There's no reason why you can't get to enlightenment. So if you humanize a Buddha, you can see that he's just like you and just like me. Whereas if you put him up really high, then maybe you think that only the Buddha can get to enlightenment and you can't actually get to enlightenment. But if you humanize a Buddha, it can help you to understand that he does the same things as you. He eats, he poops, he pees, he picks his nose, he farts, he does all the same things that you do, right? And he can get to enlightenment, you can get to enlightenment too. So this is a picture that I know to represent what the Buddha looked like during his lifetime. And I actually give this away sometimes in our courses and stuff. I have pictures of him. If you would like to have a picture of the Buddha, you're welcome to have one. The picture of the Buddha, to me, what it does is, once again, it humanizes a Buddha, but it can also maybe remind you to do some meditation, right? If you have a picture of the Buddha somewhere in your home, okay, you don't have to have that, but if you have one, maybe it'll remind you to meditate. Or maybe you're on the phone to your mom and you're starting to become frustrated and irritated, and you look over and you see that picture of the Buddha and you're like, oh, okay, let me be more polite. Let me be more kind to mom, right? So what's really helping you here is your wisdom to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to mom. Or what's really helping you is the meditation. The picture itself isn't actually producing the benefit. It's the work that you're doing to train your mind that's producing the benefit. So any questions here on this one? Yeah? And those of you guys online, you can ask questions by putting it in the Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any questions that you like.
So I was wondering how many Buddhas there are, because in Korea, I was told that anybody who becomes enlightened automatically becomes a Buddha. Okay. So when you talk about the Buddha, I'm wondering, like, is it that the OG Buddha, or yeah, how does that work?
Yeah, so this is something we're going to be talking about on the next slide about what is a Buddha, but not everybody who gets to enlightenment is a Buddha. This is one of the misunderstandings that you'll see in the Mahayana tradition and the Vajrayana tradition. People think that if you become enlightened, you are a Buddha, but the Buddha never said that. I'm going to show you his actual words, because it's very rare for a Buddha to exist in the world, and I'm going to show you that in his own words here in a moment. But yeah, he's the OG. All right. Let me see if we have any questions here online. You have a question, Joel? Yeah, feel free to get a mic.
One, two. Okay. So I understand that we are accountable, responsible on our inner journey to seek wisdom and make rightful views and do the right thing, be kind, compassionate. But now, after listening and studying or hearing misunderstandings that are completely everywhere, every corner, like let's say we're here, we're listening, but then you step out in the world and you hear everything that's going on. Then you go to every temple, they're doing all these things. There's heedlessness, people doing things in every corner. What can you tell us best method? I mean, yes, continue meditating, continue learning on the teachings, but it's a bit challenging when you're like being passive and you see people throwing food constantly, or every corner there's like so much meat consumption, in every Sunday market or every market, or there's weed in every corner. So it's like, okay, what are these temples actually teaching? And yet there's pollution here in Chiang Mai, but yet it seems no one's doing. It's 2024, no one's doing anything about it. And then there's more temples, and then there's less trees, which is the solution for the pollution. So it's so many things contradicting, and yet, okay, continue on your own path. Don't let things, you can't control everything. But then when it's time to make impact or some kind of, I don't know, something's off.
Yeah. So the Buddha taught during his life that his teachings were going to go through this 500-year cycles, and that we would get to this extreme low point in this understanding of his teachings. And that's where we are today, at that extreme low point. He described these 500-year cycles. And we just finished the cycle where he described that people would grossly misunderstand his teachings and they wouldn't understand what he actually taught during his life. So what you see in the world, happening in the world, those are decisions of other people based on whatever they're choosing to do, their cravings and desires, attachments and things like this. But what you're looking to do is train your mind to be able to restrain your mind and have the wisdom to know what is wise and unwise. So it's not about creating a perfect world and now we all live in that perfect world. It's about training your mind to know what's wise and unwise and then choose to do what is wise. So I live in the same world as you. I live in the same city as you. Yeah, I see the weed. I see, people that are, doing things that are unwise, but that's their choice. That's where they are in their life. I used to do those same things in the past, so I don't judge those people for the things that they do. Not that you are, but I don't judge those people for those kinds of things. I just know that, okay, that's where they are in their practice. It's affecting them. And I'm going to make wise choices that are for my life. And you see things like pollution, air pollution. There's people that are doing these kinds of things. There's no place in the world that is the perfect, serene place, because there's so many unenlightened beings in the world making decisions through craving and desire and attachment. But you can get to this peace and this joy irregardless of what other people are doing. What the mind will tend to do in the unenlightened state is that it's going to form its inner feelings based on this external thing. If the air is clean, I'll be happy. If the air is polluted, I'll be sad or frustrated or agitated. If nobody smokes weed, I'll be happy. If everybody's smoking weed or a lot of people are smoking weed, I'll be sad or frustrated. But you can stop forming your inner feelings on these things, but your mind doesn't know how to do that when it lacks discipline, it lacks control. So by practicing that Eightfold Path that you've learned in the various courses that you've taken with me, that's what's going to gradually train your mind to get to that point where it's peaceful and joyful. But right now, your mind is not there yet. So you need to be patient. You need to train your mind and just be committed and dedicated and diligent, like the Buddha was describing, to be able to apply the practice. And you should be able to see your mind becoming more and more peaceful over time. But it's going to take multiple years to get to that point where, you can walk down the street, you can see somebody throw trash on the street, but you can maintain your joy, that you're not going to get angry and frustrated and bitter at that kind of thing, because you need to eliminate your craving for the world to be a certain way. This is one of the cravings that the mind has. The Buddha describes it as craving and worry for the world. If you have craving for the world, you will then worry about the world because you see all the problems. So the mind's going to have anxiety. It's going to have worry because you see all the problems and the mind's discontent. But if you can get to the point where, you see the problems, but you also see the solutions to those problems, then you can remain content, because what the solution is that each individual person needs to train their mind. If they don't train their mind, they're going to make unwise decisions. And you realize that you can't control other people and what they choose to do. You can only control your own mind. So I see all kinds of problems in the world, but I can't fix it. All I can do is offer these teachings, and then the people who choose to show up and learn, then I can help them to learn. And each individual person has to choose to learn on their own and then improve the condition of their mind. So this path to enlightenment is not about changing other people or changing the world. It's about changing your inner world. You don't get to peace through changing the outside world, even though there's a certain amount of that needs to happen and needs to occur. You get to peace by changing the inner world. That's what's going to truly get to your peace and your joy. And it's a path, right? It's learning that eightfold path, gradually, consistently working towards it. Yeah. You have a question, Steve? You okay? Some impermanence, natural law of gravity. We've got a question here, and then we'll go back to the back.
Thank you, David. My question probably relates to point 5, but more generally on this general idea of devotion and prayer. So, you can pick any spiritual tradition you can think of, and most of them, including the representations of Buddhism here and everywhere, conjure up this image of prayer, of worship, of devotion to something, and so in a nutshell, it's a waste of space. Is that in terms of the progress to enlightenment?
Yeah. So when I think about devotion, I think about like being devoted to a person. The Buddha didn't teach that. He taught to be dedicated and diligent and determined for your own enlightenment. He taught to have confidence in him, right? You need to have confidence in your teacher. You need to have confidence in your own ability to get to enlightenment. But he never taught it as devotion. He taught it as remaining dedicated, diligent, and determined for yourself. And he even taught, like, when you meet those struggles, he taught about, because you're going to meet struggles on the path to enlightenment. It's not like, you just go to this happy place as you're learning and practicing. Learning and practicing these teachings, there can be quite a bit of struggles along the way. And when you meet those struggles, the Buddha teaches you not to shrink back from the struggle. Because as you're training your mind to let go of certain things in the life, it can feel really painful. It can be a struggle. It can be difficult. So what the unenlightened mind will do when it tends to meet with a certain struggle or difficulty is it'll tend to run away and go in the opposite direction. And that's just ensuring that the struggle and difficulty is going to continue, because the whole reason why you're struggling and having difficulty is because the mind doesn't have wisdom. And because it doesn't have wisdom, if you run away from the problem, then you're never cultivating the wisdom, and that struggle and difficulty is just going to reoccur over and over and over again. So what the Buddha teaches, and what I teach as well, is rather than run away or shrink back from the struggle, is turn around and walk towards the struggle. Because when you walk towards any particular struggle, this is where you cultivate wisdom, and now you can overcome that and it won't occur again, right? Whereas if you keep running away from a problem, then it will continue to reoccur. So instead of thinking about devotion, I would encourage you to think about dedication, determination, and diligence to your own growth, your own development, your own inner growth, so that you can improve your wisdom and you can heal from what hurt you, so that you never need to ever hurt again. And that comes through cultivating wisdom on the path and learning more and more. That's how you accomplish getting to enlightenment. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry. There's some microphones. I was pointing to this gentleman. We have people online that are joining us. Maybe after him, you can get the microphone from him. Yes, sir. Okay. I don't think your mic's on. Just press the button. You should see the light, and then just wait a second or two.
Hi.
There you go. It's on now.
Hello, David. I want to ask you, do you think the chatting is good for our brain or good for our health? Because I think the reason of the chatting is very good, is regular. When I do meditation, I'd like to play some songs, play some songs. The reason is like chatting. So this is my question.
Okay. So when I'm chanting, what you're doing is it's another exercise of the mind, just like with meditation, you're exercising the mind. So you're able to cultivate some memory, some concentration, you're getting some invigoration of the mind, you're getting awareness of the breath. And this is ultimately what you need in order to meditate. You need to have awareness of the mind and awareness of the breath to ease into the meditation. But it's the meditation that's actually going to produce the benefits. So the chanting itself isn't necessarily producing anything mystical or magical, right? There's no mystical, magical, superstitious, or auspicious things related to the teachings of the Buddha. It's all about cultivating the mind. So if while you're chanting, if you're cultivating awareness of mind and concentration, you're exercising the memory, you're getting awareness of the breath, this is all beneficial results of getting into the chanting or getting into the meditation. If while you're meditating, if you're playing music, you're not actually training the mind to let go. It would be unwise to continue to listen to music while you're meditating, because what you would like to do is get back as close to what the Buddha did during his lifetime to be able to train your mind. And the Buddha didn't listen to music during meditation. This is just allowing the mind to hold on to something. You would like to train the mind to let go. So if you're listening to music during meditation, I would encourage you to move that out of your practice slowly but surely. Maybe one session do with music, one session without, one session with it, one session without. Do that for a while, and then do one session with it, 2 or 3 without, one session with it, 2 or 3 without, and gradually phase it out, because the unenlightened mind doesn't like impermanence. It doesn't like change. So when you start implementing change into your practice, the mind tends to not like this. So if you do it kind of slowly but surely, the mind will have a better result of adopting this new thing, which is meditating without music. And that'll fully train your mind to let go. As long as you're meditating with music, it hasn't actually let go because you're holding on to that music. You need to cultivate the mindfulness or awareness of mind, the concentration, and train the mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, which is to let go. And that's what's going to build you the qualities that you need in daily life to produce enlightenment. Because to get to enlightenment, yes, there's meditation, but there's things you need to be doing outside of meditation as well in order to produce that mental state. And if you're not meditating properly, you're not building the qualities that you need for daily life so that you can then train your mind in daily life as well.
Hello. Oh, thank you. Do you think is there some science explaining for the chanting?
So I don't know if anybody's done any scientific studies around chanting. I have seen some people do some research around this nerve that's in the vocal area, that triggering this nerve is actually very helpful to the brain. I've seen some of that. But remember, what you're doing is you're cultivating the qualities of the mind. You're not doing anything mystical or magical or auspicious or superstitious. There's nothing like invoking the Buddha to come make any change on your behalf. That's not what you're doing on the path to enlightenment at all. That's not going to lead to enlightenment. You're welcome. Oh, okay. Yeah, up to you. We have people online that are attending, so by using the microphones, we'll be able to hear you online.
Were taught in the States?
Yes, I started teaching there in 2005.
Okay.
I was living in the Washington, D.C. area, and I had a Thai massage, 2 Thai massage centers that were doing Thai massage. And I had a school where we were teaching Thai massage, Thai culture, and Buddhism. So I used to teach there starting in 2005, and then I moved here in 2015.
Okay, just curious. All right. There's a Buddhist center in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know if you've ever traveled there or not. So I was just curious.
Yeah, the Buddhism spread all throughout the world. Okay, you have a question? Yep.
Hi, David. Thank you so much. I was wondering, just like the reasons why we step into a temple. It's like, although we see the Buddha, we don't have to worship. We just have to respect, to show the probably the gratitude, appreciation about the knowledge we learn. But like, in China, they're just like all the people is doing something for worship, offering food for the Buddha to show probably they think it's karma. They do something good for the Buddha, and they can get something back. So like I can not learn this kind of things when I back to China. So what's the wiser attitude when I back? Like I just keep learning online about what you're sharing, or like what can I do every time I step into a temple?
Yeah, sure. So the way that you can think about a temple is you can think about it as a cultural center, as a learning center. And it's been created by people who donated their land and their supplies and their financial support. And now it's available for people to come and learn and grow and develop. You can think about a temple as like the womb of a woman. This is the perfect environment for a baby to grow and become a human being. The womb of a woman is the perfect environment for an individual to grow into a human being. And the temple is considered to be that same way. The way that I think about it is it's a perfect environment in which an individual can come and learn and grow and develop, becoming a better and better human being. And that's the way that the Buddha lived during his life, is that he shared teachings that would help people to live this better way of life. He didn't teach a religion with rules and commandments and rites and rituals and ceremonies. He taught how to live this better way of life. So one of the things Joel asked is, he's like, well, what are they teaching in these temples? If we've got all these problems in the world, what are they really teaching?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what you're asking too, is that you see all these rites and rituals and ceremonies in the temples, and people aren't being taught the original teachings of the Buddha. And this is why you don't see massive numbers of enlightened beings in the world. There's only select places in the world that are really teaching with the original words of the Buddha, that are then helping people to actually experience the enlightened mental state. And this is why we see the world in decline, right? We see the earth is struggling with environmental change. You see wars, you see famine, you see poverty, you see murders and rapes and mass shootings and all kinds of mental health issues in the world. The world's declining because the teachings that are going to help support human beings to live this better way of life are pretty much non-existent throughout the world. And the Buddha described that this is the state of the world that we would be in at this point in time.
I got it. So like, what can I do when I'm back to China? Probably just keep learning the knowledge of the Buddha and trying to train my mind to some actions. And whenever I step into the temple, I just like regard this place as a place to train my mind or like something.
Yeah, I've got it set up where no matter where you are in the world, if you have an internet connection, you can come right in. There's people online now that are from China that are coming into Zoom, because I know in China they block YouTube and Facebook, but you can come in through Zoom.
Yeah.
There's people that are from China coming in that way, so you can come in that way.
Oh yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So this is a follow-up to what she asked. I'm just wondering if a Buddhist takes all these things to heart and goes back to their community, to their temple, and then kind of starts disregarding all the things that other people are doing, offering food and drinks and doing the water throwing and the string tying and whatever, are they considered rude? Are they going to get kicked out of the temple because they're reverting back to the original teachings of the Buddha and not participating in all these rites and rituals and whatever that all the temples have going on?
Each place is going to be a little bit different. If I were you, if I went to a place that was practicing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, I wouldn't be interested in going there, because if they're doing those things, then they're not even at the first stage of enlightenment. And in order for you to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to learn from somebody who's either enlightened or very close to it. And when you learn from someone who's either enlightened or very close to it, they'll be able to guide you. So if you see rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship at a temple, I wouldn't encourage you to even attend in that place, because they're leading people in a direction that aren't the teachings of the Buddha.
That would exclude 99% of all temples worldwide, though, wouldn't it?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So the Buddha talks about how it would be better for you to do what is wise for you rather than be part of a group that are doing things in an unwise way. Right? So this is why there's communities that are coming up in different parts of the world that are interested in restoring the teachings of the Buddha back to the way that they were during the lifetime of the Buddha. And that's what's going to actually lead to your enlightenment. Some people, they feel like they want to have a sense of community and be around other people. And I understand that, you can do those kinds of things. We have an international community where, yes, we meet here, but then I also teach online. So I have students all over the world that are learning more and more and more. And I travel around the world and teach at different places as well. And there's other people that are interested in accomplishing the same thing that I'm looking to accomplish, which is bring the teachings of the Buddha back into the world in such a way that massive numbers of people can get to enlightenment. So I would encourage you to, if you'd like to learn here, you're welcome to learn here or online with us. Or if you can find a community that's doing that, wonderful. But if you're from the West, are you from the US or Germany? Yeah, it's very challenging to find it in the West because these teachings haven't really made their way in that direction. So that's why I do have a significant amount of people from international areas that are learning with me. So you're welcome to learn with us if you like. Visiting a temple. Yeah. So the idea of a Buddhist, like what is a Buddhist, right? Like I would encourage you to not even subscribe to that label, right? In order to get to enlightenment, you need to eliminate all labels, even like I am German. If you hold on to that I am German or I am American, then when someone says something complimentary and wonderful about American people, I would get pleasant feelings. But then when somebody says something degrading and disparaging about Americans, I would get angry or frustrated or irritated. But if you let go of those labels and don't identify with that's who you are, then you can reside peaceful and joyful. So the Buddha himself wasn't Buddhist because the word Buddhist didn't exist until after the life of the Buddha. So I don't consider myself I am Buddhist. When I go to a hospital or something and they have a little check box, are you Christian, Muslim, Buddhist? I just check the Buddhist one because it's easier. But if they have a other, I'll usually put other. And that way, your mind more and more can disassociate with any kind of labels like I am Buddhist, I am Christian, I am this, I am that. In order to get to enlightenment, you have to eliminate all of that I am in the mind where you're not identifying with that as who you are as a person. Okay, so let me share with you these last three to help you guys understand these misunderstandings of the teachings of the Buddha. Some people refer to Gautama Buddha as a god, an avatar, or a lord. The Buddha never referred to himself this way, but you'll hear people refer to him that way. Some people refer to him as Lord Buddha or Lord Gautama or different things like this. The word Lord, if you look it up, it means someone or something having power, authority, or influence, a master or ruler. A lord is an act in a superior and domineering manner towards someone. If you know the teachings of the Buddha, he's exactly opposite of this. He never referred to himself as a lord. So if we refer to him as Lord Buddha, there's a lot of people out there in the world that is taught that the Lord Jesus Christ is the only Lord and Savior. And if we refer to the Buddha as Lord Buddha, then right away, those people aren't going to ever be interested in understanding what's ultimately going to lead to their enlightenment, which is the purification of their mind and getting to the point where the mind's peaceful and joyful permanently. So even though other people might refer to the Buddha as Lord Buddha, I don't encourage you to do that. He was referred to during his life as Master Teacher Gotama, as you saw in the teachings there, or Aesthetic Gotama, which means Monk Gotama, or Teacher Gotama. He referred to himself as the Tathagata. This means one who's discovered the truth or one who shares the truth. He referred to himself as a Buddha in some situations, but he mostly referred to himself as the Tathagata. So even though other people might think of him as a god or a lord or an avatar, I wouldn't encourage you to do that. Then you might hear people refer to blessings in the teachings of the Buddha. Some people say, may the triple gem bless you, or may the Buddha bless you. The triple gem is the Buddha, the teachings, and the community. This is referred to in Pali as the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. So there's nothing that can bless you. What a blessing is if you look it up in the dictionary, is God's favor and protection a prayer asking for God's favor or protection. That's not what the teachings of the Buddha are about. So there's no possible way that the Buddha can bless you or that the Triple Gem can bless you. But you'll hear this from different people in the Buddhist community. But even though they're saying that, just understand that it's not possible for anybody to bless you or for the Buddha to bless you or any other thing related to the teachings of the Buddha to provide a blessing for you. And then number 9, this is the one you were asking about earlier, is that there's some people that will share with you that if you get to enlightenment, you will be a Buddha. Or they will say you have reached Buddhahood. Or they will say that you have Buddha nature. And now if you get to enlightenment, you are a Buddha. But the Buddha actually never taught this. What a Buddha is that they get to enlightenment by themselves, without the help of any teachers or any guides. They figure out how to get to this enlightened mental state where their mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently for the rest of their life. That's the first criteria of what makes a Buddha, is they get to enlightenment by themselves. The second criteria is that they dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and then countless people get to enlightenment during their lifetime. And then the third criteria is that they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people get to enlightenment after their death. So this is what a Buddha is. They get to enlightenment by themselves, they dedicate their life to sharing their teachings, and countless people get to enlightenment, and then they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people get to enlightenment. So you'll get to enlightenment, but you won't do it in that way. You're going to need a teacher. You're going to need a guide. You're going to need somebody to help you and show you how to get to enlightenment. And you may not dedicate the rest of your life to sharing these teachings, and you're not preserving the teachings for afterwards. So people are misunderstanding what an actual Buddha is. That if someone thinks that they are a Buddha, they haven't understood what the Buddha actually did and what he did during his lifetime. And this is oftentimes the ego or the arrogance and the pride and the boastfulness coming into the mind. So I don't encourage you to think of yourself as a Buddha because it wouldn't be accurate. You can see that it's very rare for a Buddha to arise in the world. These are the words of the Buddha where he's describing that, how rare it is for a Buddha to arise. I can't pronounce this first name, but basically he says, student, the appearance of 5 treasures is rare in the world. What 5? The appearance of a Tathagata, an Arahant, a perfectly enlightened one, is rare in the world. So the last Buddha that the world's currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So it's not that everybody's a Buddha, or he would have said that, right? He's saying it's very rare for a fully perfectly enlightened Buddha to arise in the world. We can share the rest of these if you like. Number 2, he says, a person who can teach the teachings and discipline proclaimed by a Tathagata is rare in the world. 3, when the teachings and discipline proclaimed by a Tathagata has been taught, a person who can understand it is rare in the world. 4, when the teachings and discipline proclaimed by a Tathagata has been taught, a person who can understand it and practice it is in accordance with the teachings is rare in the world. And then number 5, a grateful and thankful person is rare in the world. Student, the appearance of these 5 treasures is rare in the world. So you can see that it's very rare. This is why you see so many difficulties in the world. It's very rare for a Buddha to arise. It's very rare for someone to be able to teach his teachings. It's very rare for someone to understand his teachings. It's very rare for someone to understand his teachings and actually practice them. And then it's rare for people to be thankful. You probably know that in your own life, that as you go around the world, it's probably very rare for you to see someone who has gratitude and appreciation for the things that you do, perhaps. But you need to learn how to do things because it's wise, not because you want somebody to be thankful or have gratitude or appreciation for you. You do what's wise in the world because it produces beneficial results in the world. So here you can see the Buddha didn't describe that everybody is a Buddha. He described that it's very rare for a Buddha to arise in the world. And the last one that the world is currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. So you're going to need teachers, you're going to need guides, you're going to need someone to help you. So that's what I do as part of these classes, courses, retreats here at the temple and online is I help people get to enlightenment. And I share all these resources at no cost so that people can make their way to enlightenment, whether it's the books, the videos, the podcasts, the classes, courses, retreats, personal guidance. You can even sit down with me and talk regularly, either here or online if you'd like to meet, because it's one thing to learn in classes, but it's another thing to relate it to something specific that you're struggling with in daily life. So if you ever would like to meet privately, you can talk here in Thailand, or you can schedule with me online and we can meet in Zoom together, and I'll meet with you and help you understand how to apply these to a specific situation that you have. So this is everything that I have to share with you guys today. Is there any questions that you guys have related to anything that I've shared? No questions? Okay, so what I'll do then to just end is I will invite you guys to our future classes. If you'd like to come, we have classes here on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. They're regular classes that are happening at 9 a.m. and you can tune in by live stream if you like. If you're in a time zone that it doesn't work for you to tune in here at 9 a.m., I also teach the same course, the same class at home at 9 p.m. So that might be a better time for you, whatever time it is in your time zone, like Germany or a place like that. Probably the 9 p.m. class would be better if you'd like to attend a live class. But also these classes are recorded on YouTube, on Facebook, on our podcast. You can actually listen to them even if you can't attend live on Monday or Tuesday or some other time. If you're interested in eliminating your anger and your sadness and frustration, there's help for you here, and I can help you to understand how to accomplish that. We have a course coming up next week if you're around, Monday through Friday. There's a Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course, which is all the foundational teachings that you need to get to enlightenment. It's available at no cost. It starts at 9 a.m. on Monday morning. You can sign up on our website if you like, or you can just show up here. That's fine. And then on next Saturday, I have a course called Introduction to the Teachings of the Buddha. It's a 3-hour course where from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday, I'm going to be introducing students to the teachings of the Buddha and helping you guys to really get started from the beginning. But I also teach those things in our other courses as well. But if you'd like to attend the Introduction to the Teachings of the Buddha, that's on Saturday at 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. And I'm going to be live streaming that, as well as the course next week. I'll be live streaming that as well. Not this week coming up, but the following week. I will be starting on Monday to teach the foundational teachings. And I do that course every month, the first week of every month. And there's other courses too, like harmony in relationships, experiencing the jhanas and the 4 stages of enlightenment. We have various retreats and things like this. So everything's accessible on our website, which is buddha-dailywisdom.com. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining to learn and practice and dedicate some time to learning the teachings of the Buddha. Perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Sawadee Kap, Sawadee Kap, Sawadee Kap.